10th, 2021 to order. Item 1 is related to public access to meetings. Due to the public health emergency and the need to limit gatherings, we are encouraging members of the public to attend school board meetings remotely. I would also like to note to the board as well as to the public, our school board meetings are business meetings of our school board. Under state law, Wisconsin state law, we are required to provide access to the public with respect to our meetings. In June of 2020, our board recognized and authorized Superintendent Gerlach to pursue our reopening plan with the number one priority of safety for students, staff, and all those within our buildings. That was the number one priority. Superintendent Gerlach has adopted, as of last summer, a mandatory mask policy with respect to students, staff, visitors to our buildings, including our school board meetings. That continues to remain in effect. Today, the superintendent received several communications from individuals indicating that people were planning on attending our meeting this evening and believe that our mask policy is voluntary, not mandatory, and we're not intending to wear masks. We have provided accommodation to the public at Ben Franklin where they are able to access our meeting in full in the interest of the safety of those individuals, board members, members of our staff, as well as professionals that will be here this evening making presentations to our business meeting of the board. We, again, are providing that remote accommodation to members of the public. Our mask mandate remains in full force and effect unless and until the superintendent makes a determination otherwise. We will move into the meeting opening and roll call. Carlin, could you please do the roll call and verification of quorum?
Mr. Mansky.
Here.
Ms. Fa.
Here.
Mr. Pope.
Here.
Ms. Portson. Mr. Wade.
Here.
Ms. Scott.
Here.
Mr. Ebel.
Here.
Ms. Rano.
Here.
Ms. Erler.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Item 3, Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We will move into item 4, which is public comments. Due to the fact that we are providing access remote this evening, we are waiving public comment. Under Wisconsin law, we are allowed as a board to allow public comment at our meetings. We within our policy, do so with respect to agenda items. However, due to the unique circumstances this evening, we will be waiving public comments in person. We also allow for emailed comments. Carlin, did we receive any emailed comments for this evening's meeting?
We did not receive any comments emailed.
All right, okay, so there are no email comments. So we will move into item 5, presentations. A, Student Senate Representative Report. Alexis Durkee.
Hi everyone. So for today's report, I'd just like to give a big congratulations to the Spash boys cross country team who just recently competed in state and got first place. And on top of that, we have a Spash boy runner who is a senior, Jake Bourget, and he was the individual meet champion.
Wow.
It's a really, really busy week over at Spash. We're wrapping up our second week of AP testing very gladly. Thankful for that. And it's also Spirit Week here at Spash. And for the first time all year, we are having dress-up days. Today was flannel day. Tomorrow's jersey day. Thursday will be crayon day, which means you just wear all one color, look like a crayon. And then Friday is red and black day for Spirit Day. Saturday is going to be the senior gala at the Holiday Inn. And once again, this isn't a dance, but rather a senior celebration. It's a formal attire event, which will include photo booths, dinner, and introduction of the senior gala court, announcements of the senior gala queen, and entertainment from the Mr. Spash finalists, and lots of prizes. This Thursday is our Spash Orchestra concert in the Spash Auditorium. Next Tuesday, May 18th, is our Spash Choir concert. And then on Wednesday, May 26th, our Spash bands will perform outdoors at the Piffner Band Shell. Graduation is now only 3 weeks away, and we'll be in the Spash Fieldhouse officially May 30th with limited attendance. Each student gets 2 tickets. And finally, Spash seniors will be invited to return to their elementary schools for an outdoor graduate walk on Friday, May 28th during the afternoon after our practice graduation. So that concludes my final school board announcement. I just wanted to give everyone a big thank you for giving me this opportunity. I've had lots of time and I've learned a lot. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Alexis. Good luck to you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a pleasure to have you at our meetings and provide us with input about what's happening at Spash.
Thank you.
We'll move into item B, communication report, Sarah O'Donnell.
Sarah's not able to be with us tonight, so she asked me to give her information. The first item under her report is the communications dashboard, so you can take a peek at that. It's linked into the agenda. And then second is our school perception surveys are open currently. To date, we have 528 staff responses. There are 1,235 parent responses. The surveys are open through May 18th, and if someone didn't get a survey, they should reach out to Sarah O'Donnell, and she'd be happy to get them a link to the survey. We did open up student surveys today, and we're off to a great start with the student responses. We have 975, and Sarah had indicated that the results are in line with what we've seen previously for a response rate, which is above the industry standards. So more to come on that at a later date.
Do board members have any questions of Corey with respect to the communications report? So I just want to note that there will be times we do allow for people to remove their mask in the event they're speaking and they are more comfortable providing comment without mask. That's something that we have been allowing all along. I guess I just want to note how every year the perception survey is incredibly important. It truly informs the strategic plans that happen in the district at the building level, the grade level, department level, through leadership, through cabinet, and the board. It's especially important this year because we will be embarking on our 5th year of our strategic plan and are planning to enter into our new strategic planning process this fall. So we really encourage people to help us out, both with how we're going to move forward next year, but also with how we can continue to improve this district as we move into strategic planning this fall. So again, we really encourage you this year to respond to that survey, and again, if for whatever reason you haven't received it, to get in touch with Sarah here at the district. All right, we'll move into item C, which is superintendent's report.
The operation status update. Currently, we have 2 staff that are positive, 2 quarantined. Students, we have 2 students and 50 quarantined. You can see the colored chart that we've been using all year long. The only change to this is is the top as it relates to our cases. And we moved it from green to yellow as we have seen a slight uptick of cases. You can see the new cases over the last 2 weeks for Wisconsin is 11 per 100,000, Portage County 7 per 100,000, and our school district 14 per 100,000. Our learning model will change again next week. Hopefully it'll be the last time. We will return 5 days a week, K-12, starting May 17th, and we will finish the school year with all of our students K-12 in our buildings. I'd like to thank Lowe's Home Improvement for donating 2 pallets of hand sanitizer to the district. So we have plenty of hand sanitizer, and we're very appreciative of that. Graduation 2021, as Alexis said, SPASH will be in the Fieldhouse May 30th at 1 o'clock. We also have Project Search at SPASH May 28th at 2, and Charles Fernandez will be in the SPASH Auditorium the 27th at 7 o'clock. And again, we have limited capacity for all of our graduations this year. Teacher Appreciation was last week, as was School Nutrition Week. I'd like to thank all of our staff for doing an incredible job during a very, very challenging school year. We did treat them to a lunch from Rockman's, last week, and wish them well as we finish up the last few weeks of school. We are continuing with our retirement dinner this year at the Holiday Inn. You'll note that as because of COVID, we canceled last year. And so we are doing about 3-4 months of preparation in about 3-4 weeks to get that off the ground. And we will recognize staff that retired last year as well as this year. And that'll be at the Holiday Inn on June 3rd. And I'd like to point out that this week is Portage County Hmong Week, and there are a number of activities that are going to go on throughout the course of the week. And starting today with a wonderful activity at Create, and I'm highly disappointed in Ann because I thought she was going to come in here in her beautiful dress, but I do have a picture of that. That's all I have, unless there are questions for me.
Do any board members have questions of Craig with respect to the superintendent's report this evening? Okay, we will move into our consent agenda. Our consent agenda includes minutes of the prior school board meeting of April 12th, 2021, minutes of the school board organizational meeting of April 26th, 2021, the approval of the schedule of monthly bills, and the employment recommendations. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Motion by Mansky. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Pope. So we have a motion by Mansky, a second by Pope. I will have Carlin do the roll call because of the bills.
Mr. Wade,
Yes.
Ms. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Ebel,
Yes.
Mr. Pope,
Yes.
Ms. Portson,
Yes.
Ms. Rano,
Yes.
Ms. Va,
Yes.
Mr. Mansky,
Yes.
Ms. Erler.
Yes.
And motion passes 9-0.
Thank you.
Can I ask to get a copy of the employment recommendations? We didn't get those.
Yes, we'll make sure that we get one emailed right out to all board members. This is that time of year where decisions are being made, sometimes right up to before the board meeting starts. And so we want to make sure that we can get the decisions made as quickly as possible so that we can get people on board for us moving into the next school year. But yeah, Barb, we'll get that right out to everybody. Thank you. We'll move into item 7. Typically, Mike Wade would run this part of the meeting, the business services and HR. He has asked me to run it due to the fact that he is remote this evening, so I will do so. So the first item on the agenda is A, which is our WPS permanent easement request.
Good evening. We received a request from WPS for a permanent easement for a little trench work that would affect us in the parking lot at PJ Jacobs Junior High. The company is going to be working with the city to remove the overhead power lines, and this requires some small trench work in our area of our lot, and I'd recommend approval.
Are there any questions of Tom with respect to this project?
When's it gonna happen? Is there gonna be any interruption of using the
There should be
area?
no interruption. It'll be done in August.
Okay.
There's no school. Yeah.
Any other questions of Tom? So I would look for a motion to approve the WPS easement in the PJ Jacobs Junior High parking lot.
So move. Wade?
Motion by Wade, do I have a second?
Second it.
Second by Portson. So I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion or questions with respect to the motion? All those in favor with aye? Aye. Aye. Any opposed with nay? The motion carries. We'll move into item B, financial summary referendum progress report.
The next item is our typical monthly report to bring you up to speed with what has been going on with some of the projects in terms of the cash balances, et cetera. Paid to date so far of all the projects is just over $50 million. Contracts to date issued, $70,354,000 and some change. And the contract balance is $20,347,000 and some change. We have completed, almost completed work at Jefferson, Kennedy, and Madison. That'll be done shortly. McDill and McKinley are beginning to get underway. Roosevelt is done. Washington is done. Ben Franklin and PJ's will be worked on today in the summer, as soon as school is out. Spash is, as you know, is pretty much done. And then we'll begin looking at some other of the support buildings and transportation. So that concludes that portion of the report.
Are there any questions of Tom with respect to the progress report for the referendum projects? Hearing none, thank you, Tom.
You're welcome.
We'll move into item C, which is 2018 referendum in the rearview mirror.
Okay, let me click on the right button here and I'll I can see it's working now.
It's starting.
Yeah. Okay, on a couple of occasions in the past, the board has asked what has transpired with the referendum in terms of what we originally projected to today, what's happened. So I put this little brief presentation together to hopefully answer that question. Oops. As you well know, we went to the voters in 2018 with two referendum questions. The first was to exceed the, to sell general obligation bonds in the amount of $75.9 million. That was the information that I just covered in the previous presentation. But also was the question to exceed the operating revenue limit by $3.5 million for recurring purposes. This means there'd be a one-time adjustment to the revenue limit, increasing it by $3.5 million moving forward then from that point. And in that activity, there were these things that were to be contemplated. To maintain educational programs, we were going to allocate $2 million. To establish adequate technology budget, we were going to apportion $1 million. And then to establish adequate maintenance budget, we were going to allocate the other $500,000. In a little bit further detail, when this breaks out, what we saw was actually maintaining educational programs meant to improve and maintain the compensation model that was recently created, at least recently in 2018. Expand benefit opportunities for hourly staff, which also occurred, and then to maintain class sizes. With technology, there were a number of activities that took place with respect to connectivity, equipment, and services that were provided, and as it turned out, became critically important over the last year during the pandemic. And then in the areas of maintenance, the allocation would go towards roof replacements, operations, and maintenance services. Of course, a roof, depending on the type of activity, could well exceed $500,000 by several times a factor, but this isn't allocated necessarily for one large project, but rather portions of those. So back in 2018, we were struggling, well, what would be our projection? What did we think the impact would be of the referendum question on the construction, as well as the referendum question on the operating reserve, on the operating budget? And we thought that with respect to the recurring referendum, we might see an impact of 77 cents a thousand, and then with a referendum, 69 cents per thousand for a combined increase when everything was put together of $1.46. At the time, our rate was $7.45 a thousand. The combined mill rate, if it came in at 146 as projected, would have brought our mill rate up to 891. And at that time in 2018, the state average was 979, so we still would have been 88 cents below the state average if all of that transpired. How did that go backwards? I just clicked. Okay. All right, what actually happened was instead of 891 per thousand, the combined total of those activities came in at $8.18. So in actuality, it was 73 cents below what we projected at the time. And currently at state average being at 9.22, we're now at $1.04 under the state average. So we came in much lower than what we projected, and the impact was considerably less. At the time, this is what the tax impact projected looked like. We were at 745 at the bottom. We anticipated to go at 891. We were near the bottom. In this case, we were at the bottom of these comparable school districts, with the purple being the state average. Well, what happened? This is what actually happened. We came in at 818. These are all the same districts that we compared to before, and the state average is in the purple at 979. Auburndale is now low. They probably had retired some debt or something that came in lower, etc. So that's a very interesting thing. We fared actually far better than we thought. I'd be remiss without pointing this out, though. This graph shows the loss of students in September and third Friday. The red line is the gross loss average below the 0 point, which is that's upper solid line across, horizontal. So we lost about 3%. Those are the various columns are different grade categories. You can't read the small print, but that'd be kindergarten, first, second, third grade, etc., pre-kindergarten. What that means to us is effectively we've lost $1.1 million in revenue limit authority. So while we did approve a referendum for $3.5 million, it's a good case, a good learning point, a good teaching point, I should say, that particular revenue limit threshold is not permanent. It changes and fluctuates every year depending on what happens. So even though we got the $3.5 million extra authority in 2018, because of the loss of 214 students, third Friday in September, our revenue limit formula will show a $1.1 million loss or reduction because of that. The first year it carries as a, we're protected a little bit in the first year because it counts as an exemption, but the following year it disappears unless there's some other circumstance that enters into it. So it doesn't help us, quite frankly. But just wanted you to be aware of that.
You-
Questions?
Do you mind if we ask questions? while
Go
it's
ahead,
open?
yeah.
Can you get closer to the microphone, please?
Okay, was that a surprise, the loss of 214 students?
The 1.1 million was not a surprise because we knew it was coming once we saw we had 214 students that
But
we
I
lost.
mean,
in
was it a surprise that we lost that many
Yes.
students?
Yes.
Yeah,
And that's uniform throughout the state.
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
Many school districts throughout the state suffered significant losses, obviously impacted by the pandemic. Wausau lost in the 300-400s or
Right.
something like that.
Is there any potential that I know there's been talk that the legislature would potentially not include this year in calculations due to COVID and the impact on districts across the state? Is there any potential for that?
There is potential. There have been discussions by the legislature and by joint finance. I've not seen any specific serious suggestions or outcomes at this particular point. But it certainly is a possibility. And that's kind of why I mention frequently that budgets are wrong, because all things keep changing and we just have to kind of go with the flow. And we usually wind up making decisions covering past experiences, and we're always catching up. So they could make a change, absolutely.
Is there any feeling that that number will come back? That those students that lost will come back?
It all depends what they do in the legislation.
Yeah.
If they were to say, for example, that if the legislation said we could, instead of losing the 214, we could use the number of the preceding year, then that number wouldn't go down. But, and I don't know what they do about this coming third Friday. I don't know what those numbers are going to look like. So it is totally, you could make up any story you wanted because we have no idea what's going to happen. Just don't know. If nothing happens, we're losing 1.1 million. That I know for a fact.
So in terms of the decline, we've talked about this as a board, administration has talked about it all year, as you note, a significant number of those kids are pre-K. We saw that there were families on kind of both ends of the spectrum that chose to not have kids attend school this year. I believe it's always been our expectation that as we came back to a better, more new normal, that we would be seeing families choosing to make the decision to send kids to school. So we're hopeful. I believe administration has indicated that we're hopeful that we will be seeing, a number of students returning to us, and potentially some of those students, especially those 4K kindergarten students who chose not to come this year, to potentially enroll for our district next year.
Okay.
Our intent, just so you're aware, we're in the process of creating a letter to send to all of those families that chose not to send their kids this year, asking them to let us know what their intent is and hoping to get them back into the district. So we're trying to continually make contact with them.
So Tom, just in summary, I guess what you're saying is we had an expectation that we would be seeing an increase in that tax rate amount as we went into the referendum. And now that we're back at 2021, that mill rate is back down to 819.
Yes, the mill rate came in much lower than anticipated in 2018.
Okay. Do board members have any other questions of Tom with respect to the report? Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, we'll move into item D, which is review of the financial statements.
Hello, everyone. The financial statements are through March 31st. We're always looking back while we're working on the most recent month. The reports include balance sheet highlights, revenue and expense highlights. As of the end of March, our major revenues are coming out as expected in terms of budget, and our expenditures are as expected as well in terms of budget. There isn't anything that's popping up that's unexpected at this time. Does anyone have any questions for me regarding the financial?
Any questions of Mike? All right, thanks. So it's good to hear we're on track. I know it's been a year of lots of uncertainty and lots of changes and shifts. So that's wonderful that we're looking like we're on track. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Yep. All right, we will move into item 8A, which is teachers' contracts. And we have Beth here.
Good evening. So we have 514 teacher contracts to present this evening. They're all listed in your attachments there, and they do include the 1.23% increase that was granted through negotiations and by the board. And looking for your approval.
Do board members have any questions of Beth?
Is that there were 3 attachments. I'm looking at the teacher's contract. Is that the one we're looking at right now?
Yes.
I just ask, I haven't seen this master contract before. Why aren't work days listed? Because we don't know them or what?
So the teacher contract is a 193 workday, and that's just a standard. If you look at the first attachment under teacher contract, it does have workdays in bold, so that will be filled in.
Where it says, is that a hashtag mark there?
Yes.
Hashtag work days. So that'll be filled in with 193?
Correct.
And then the amount with respect to each student, or each teacher will be.
Mm-hmm.
Beth, does that also it includes also step with respect to supplemental
It
salary
does.
schedule
Yep.
as well?
This what's attached there will be their actual salary for the upcoming school year.
Okay. Do board members have any other questions with respect to the contracts as presented? Then I would be looking for a motion to approve the teacher contracts as presented.
So moved.
Motion by Ebel. Do I have a second? A second, was that Portson?
Judy.
Or Judy? Okay, so motion by Ebel, second by Ranow. Any discussion or questions on the motion? All those in favor with aye?
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Any opposed with nay? Contracts are approved. We will move into item B, which is health insurance renewal.
Yes, so we have our annual health insurance renewal, and that came in at a 9.5% increase based off our loss ratio, which is 103.4. This is the highest loss ratio we've had since 2017, when it was 104.5. So that's why we're looking at the significant increase. We're contracted with M3. John Price is here this evening, and he'll go through the renewal with you in detail. But in an effort to bring down that increase, M3 was able to negotiate a 1% decrease, bringing us to an 8.5%. And then M3 is also recommending that we make a couple of changes to the plan this year. One would be increasing our emergency room co-pays from $250 to $350. That would not impact those on the high deductible plan until they actually meet their deductible. And if they are actually admitted to the hospital, then that copay is waived. Correct, John?
Yes.
Yes. So then the second recommendation is to move all employees to the high deductible health plan effective January 1st, 2022. And that would impact 152 employees. So I am going to turn it over to John to provide you with the details of the renewal and then certainly entertain any questions that you would have.
Super. Good evening. For obvious reasons, I'm going to keep it relatively brief, but I will, of course, take questions if you're interested. I want to talk a little bit about the medical plan renewal, the initial WEA increase, our opinion of the increase, and then our recommendations. So one of the challenges is you had 15 members with higher than usual medical claims. They exceeded $100,000. That is unusual. It happens. It's unusual. That's why they have the insurance. So, you know, it's not something to be overly or permanently concerned with, but it does drive up cost. Total high-cost claims were $3,798,000, or 30% of the total claim cost of $12,617,000. Beth mentioned the loss ratio. For every dollar that you're paying WEA, they're spending $1.03. Given the high claimants, that's likely to go up temporarily. So when we start to look at, okay, well, how does this compare with the market? Is it reasonable? We looked at 36 other employer groups and 7 other insurance companies, and we do that for comparison purposes. You can't go out to bid every single year because you'll fatigue the bid process, but you can do an analysis compared to what other companies would do because we have all of their information on how they rate those groups. What we found was that WEA's pooling point of $200,000 is lower than the regional benchmark of $250,000. If I'm you, I'm asking what's a pooling point. Anything over 200 is thrown out of the claims experience, which helps you on the renewal. And the fact that it's a lower pooling point of 200 instead of the average, which is 250,000, also helps your renewal. $1.3 million in claims exceeded the pooling point, which helped you to have a better renewal than you would have. They charge you, before we think that they're doing this out of the sort of the kindness of their heart, they do charge you for that pooling point. And they're charging you 6.14%, and that's higher than the 3.35% benchmark. So, we did talk with them, and that was part of how we were able to negotiate the renewal down somewhat. Medical and prescription drug is at 8% versus a benchmark of 7.89%, and administrative fees are appropriate at 9.5% versus the average of 7 companies, which was 9.75%. The result of this is that if you went with the average of the 7 other companies, you would have had a 19.6% renewal. So a 19.6% is what our underwriting department calculated after looking at 7 other insurance companies. It tells us that the renewal is fair and reasonable. That's really what was concluded as a result of it. When you look at the actual cost, you can't have this kind of increase without being somewhat alarmed. A 9.5% increase is $1.3 million. The good news is negotiating the renewal by a percent saved an additional $183,000. We were glad that there was movement from them. That was solely based on the merit of your relationship with the WEA Trust, just to be candid. We did use some of the statistics, of course, but they value their relationship with you, which I think is good. The increase in ER copay from $250 to $350 that's being recommended would save $242,000. By the way, there were 283 ER visits in the most recent report. 43 of those visits were avoidable. We know with the pandemic and everything else that's going to also occur. But having the copays waived if you're admitted means it might not hurt to increase the copayment in an area where you might want to steer people to urgent care or to their doctor. Lastly, if you move all employees on January 1st of 2022 and increase the ER copay, the cumulative effect is $413,558 in savings, and the net increase then would end up being $950,000 versus $1,363,000. So, we felt like this was a reasonable way to offset what's a challenging renewal, what could arguably be as high as a 19.6%. Just a reminder on why this group went to WEA. You as a board approved it, and part of it was that WEA does have a statewide national network. At the time, they were saving us $545,513. Their renewal is arguably still lower than where you would be if you were with Security had we accepted their renewal at the time. That's very positive. And since you had no changes for July 1st of 2020, it seems like this all makes perfect sense to have these kinds of changes. So our recommendation in working with Beth and Tom and the rest of the team is to increase the employee premium contribution by the amount of the renewal for the traditional plan, but there's no increase for the high deductible health plan since employees don't contribute to that plan. Implement the ER copayment of $350 and move everyone to the qualified high deductible health plan on January 1st. High deductible health plan employee contributions remain set as of July 1st, 2021. On the dental plan, there's no increase in premiums. There are two minor positive changes. One is it can save the district money by not having x-rays as frequently. Moving the bite wing x-ray from once every 6 months to once every 12 months, full mouth x-rays from once every 3 years to every 5 years. But then doing something favorable for employees, they don't currently have dental implant coverage. Adding that for both of your plans, puts you in a situation where you have no increase and you've made some nice adjustments to your dental plan. So we don't have anything else really related to it. Are there any questions?
What is the current deductible, high deductible?
Off the top of my head, 3,000 and 6,000, thank you.
But the employee is only responsible for $1,400 on the single plan and $2,800 on the family plan.
What did you mean then by 3,000 and 6,000?
We have the HRA that reimburses employees for that additional, or the difference, I guess, between the deductibles, but that 3,000 and 6,000, and John can probably speak better to this, gets us a lower premium amount.
So when we made the change to WEA, one of the things we did is increased it from 2,000, 4,000 to a higher amount. But the reimbursement that's Beth's speaking of keeps your plan better than average because of the health reimbursement on that deductible.
What is the increase for staff who are currently not on the high deductible and then going into the high deductible premiums?
So the increase on the traditional plan is 8.08%. The increase for the employee, however, is also, for the high deductible health plan is also 8.08% technically, but for the employee it's 0 on the high deductible health plan because they don't contribute.
Are we basically then taking away all the choice that employees have on what type of plan they have if we move everyone?
You are, that's a great point. The question was, are you eliminating choice? And to some extent you are, because employees are then, all going to be on the qualified high deductible health plan. It's a good point. The plans, however, do have the same coverage services and they both have the same network. So employees can continue to go to Ascension, Aspirus, Marshfield Clinic.
And again, there are only 152 employees currently on the traditional plan.
Yes.
Would this be a one-year thing, in a year reevaluating and saying we could then possibly readjust?
I would have to say that unfortunately health insurance is always a moving target. It is something that your district and most districts analyze every single year. So I do think that it's something that needs to be evaluated every year. However, the trend towards the qualified high deductible health plan makes it seem unlikely that you would go backwards on that.
should also point out that with the traditional HMO, the cost that the employees have to pay for their contribution plus their deductibles, they, by joining the HMO, or by joining the high deductible, they pay less now. If they pay themselves in their own savings plan, they will have to put out less money than what they do under the traditional HMO.
Could you say, I mean, how do I say this? Could you guess why people weren't on the high deductible in the first place, these 152 people? What circumstances would make them not want to be a high deductible?
So if I were to guess, a lot of it is fear of change and really sort of lack of education about the plans. If I were an employee and had the opportunity to be on a plan where I have reimbursement for the deductible and don't have to contribute, and I were also aware that financially it's an advantage for me, I would make the change. But I can tell you, just from dealing with family and friends even, oftentimes they'll say to me, they obviously want me to go to that plan, must be not as good because they're not charging anything for it. People become somewhat suspicious, and I think that plays into it. The only other reason, and it's a bit more, sort of legitimate, is employees do have to meet their own prescriptions as it relates to the deductibles with the qualified high deductible health plan in a different way than they meet them with the traditional plan. So there is a difference there, but for most employees, it's still worth making the change.
Is it co-deductible on drugs, prescriptions and things, that included in their high deductible?
The co-deductible?
All right, co-pay.
No.
Oh, there-
No.
Oh. So they just use up their deductible anyway. I'm wondering about the 15 instances that went way above and used most of the money. I'm just wondering what the effect on somebody like that would be. I don't know, because I don't know the intricacies.
Yeah, I don't think it impacts them in such a way that there's a material difference, especially since the premium is zero. So when we do an analysis on it, it's still to their benefit, even when they meet the maximum out of pocket, which they would if they're one of those 15.
The major deductibles and things like that would all be the same?
It's one way of saying it, yes.
Okay.
The maximum out of pocket ends up being a net improvement on the high deductible health plan. It sometimes doesn't feel like it along the way because you're more engaged in the cost along the way, and you're forgetting that it's coming out of your paycheck with that traditional plan.
I think one other important thing to point out is that the new hires for the last 2 years, I think, only have the high deductible option.
Now, are staff able to contribute to like a HSA type account?
Yes.
Okay, and then I just want to clarify, because the deductible for single is 3,000, I'm assuming family is 6,000?
Correct.
And then out of their pocket, max is 14 and 2,800, and then the rest is the reimbursements being provided by the district.
HRA. Yep.
So Beth, can you just remind me, I know this has been a direction that we've been moving in, I think, since maybe the first year I was on the board, that movement. And so can you just talk a little bit about what we've seen? Because I know your office has been making efforts each year to encourage people to make the switch. And so what have we seen in terms of those numbers of staff making the change?
It's been significant. I mean, I think last year when we first, I feel like it was maybe 2 years ago, we did employee meetings in each of the buildings or several of the buildings. And I want to say we were at 60% at that time. And now we're just down to 152 employees. So it's in the last 2 years, I would say that the movement has been significant.
Just one more question. What happens if they meet their deductible? Do they have additional bills that are due, or are they then covered entirely, or do they have additional out-of-pocket expenses?
So they would have an emergency room copay.
Mm-hmm.
But not once the deductible's not once the maximum out of pocket's been satisfied.
But that's the only additional.
That's the only additional charge.
So the emergency department cost does not go towards.
It doesn't
their
go towards the deductible, but it does go towards the maximum out of pocket. And once that maximum out of pocket is met, they have 100% coverage for in-network providers. And because it's ER, all providers are considered in-network. That's a change that occurred a few years ago. But
So it doesn't matter where they are, if they have to go to, if they're presenting to the ED, and then that's considered as in-network.
Exactly.
Regardless, okay. Is there a difference in the amounts that they'd be paying if they had to go somewhere out of network? So say they're traveling and they had to go and it was an emergency, so they had to go in.
If it was non-emergency or non-urgent care, then it's an 80-20 plan, and there is a higher out-of-pocket maximum. I actually didn't bring your current plan because we're not changing it. I should have brought that plan along.
I heard the numbers 3,000 and 6,000 mentioned, and then you said it goes down to 1,400 and 2,800.
Right.
What is the program that makes up the difference?
Called a health reimbursement arrangement, or HRA.
And where does that money come from?
It comes from the district, but it still saves you financially, because what happens is when you increase the deductible, it significantly lowered the premium for the district. And the reimbursement on the deductible is lower. It's usually less than half of the district meets their deductible. So because you're reimbursing employees, instead of them having to meet their own deductible, it's beneficial to them, but it's also beneficial to them in terms of the fact that the district is lowering the district's liability because the premium is lower by having a higher deductible. And then to your point, it's nice because this district is also using an HSA, which enables employees to save their own money to go towards that deductible.
Is the,
So the high deductible threshold for a family is $6,000. The district is paying a portion of that. The employee pays the first amount up to, I'll make up a number, let's say $3,000. And then we pay the rest up to $6,000. And then everything after that's 100%. That's the HRA. And then the employee who normally now, or in the past, has paid a premium amount themselves, they pay that to themselves instead, or to the district, or to the insurance company, I should say. They pay it to themselves in a health savings account, HSA. And if they don't use it, they keep it, and it grows as an account. Each year, they can put more and more and more and more in there. And they just pay themselves. And that's where they draw the money for prescriptions and other costs, et cetera, that go towards their deductible until that's met.
And through our wellness program, they can also get up to $600 contributed to that HSA if they participate in certain events or challenges.
so I know the HSA, it rolls over from year to year. The HRA does not, correct? So it's just for the year, and then when it's out, and then the following year, then it just restarts, correct?
Yep.
I have a question.
Yes.
Go ahead, Barb.
First of all, can you close the shared screen thing so I can see some people that I'm talking at?
Thanks, Tom.
Introduce your person so the board knows who they're talking to.
Sure.
I
With
read
us tonight is
lips a
also-
lot, so.
With us tonight also from M3 is Claire Preuss. Claire's an intern, so this is her first meeting as an intern, by the way.
Hi, Claire.
Welcome.
When we adopted WEA, I specifically asked about the prescriptions. If somebody was on something and they didn't cover it, could the doctor appeal that whole process? And I was assured that they would be able to do that. In the last couple of weeks, I've gotten contacted by not only my own family member, but another lady who has a high needs kid. And it appears to me, and I may be just being paranoid, but it appears to me that they're targeting those high claims families. My family might be one of those over $100,000. But I'll tell you what happened, and most of you know that I have a grandson with type 1 diabetes. And it takes a while for the doctor to find an insulin that works well with each individual person. they found that insulin, his A1C was coming down nicely. They had a nice chart of it coming down the last 3 years. And then all of a sudden WEA says, we're not going to cover that anymore. The doctor appealed and they said, too bad, he's got to get sick first. Well, you know what, he's already sick. But I'm just a little concerned that they are targeting those high claim families. And maybe Beth, I don't know if there's something you guys can do to kind of look into that, but it's very upsetting when it's the health of my grandchild in this case, and another gal who has a special needs kiddo as well.
So, first, thank you for sharing that information. I do want to be careful to protect the patient in terms of protected health information. So I have to start there. I'm going to speak generally first, and then I'm just going to say one thing related to what you're talking about. First of all, your concern is legitimate. Obviously, nobody wants to put someone in a situation where they're not getting the medical care or prescription drug coverage that they need and deserve. Regarding the statement that when the switch to WEA was made, the implication is that the plan is an exact match in the area of prescriptions. It is not. It is not something, I hope no one here said it was an exact match. We probably could go back and look at the notes. Hopefully we could look at the footage. But I'll tell you what we always say, that 95 to 98% of all the prescriptions fall at the same tier and generally are around the same price. We do hear from people that for the other 3 to 5%, we hear from the people where the cost went up. We never hear from the people where the cost went down. And we have many confirmed instances here at the district where significant cost in the way of prescriptions actually went down for people that have had just tens of thousands of dollars in prescription drug costs have actually saved quite a bit of money. But the reverse is also true. Regarding the situation that you might be referring to, I do know this. I can't speak to it specifically, but I do know that there was a negotiated alternative option that was approved and agreed upon. So that's all I can say about it. I'm more than comfortable talking with anybody offline confidentially about it. We do want to make sure that all patients and members get the treatment that they deserve. And we're not saying that WEA is perfect or that in every situation they've proved to be perfect. They haven't. But I hope that helps a little bit, Barb.
Yeah, I've always been I had WEA for years, and I've always been very, very happy with them.
So I guess, what would you recommend for someone in a situation as Barbara's noting? What should, or what is the district telling them to do, or what should they know they can do? What are their rights?
So there is a grievance process, and that has to be followed through and completed. And from there, John, it's...
Yeah, step one is, when you're interested in your prescriptions and your prescription drug costs and you're engaged with your physician, ask questions. Also, the reason why they have these 800 numbers and customer service, I would not personally shy away from calling. They actually do try to help you in reducing costs. I think many of us, because, insurance companies are not our favorite, we don't prefer to call them first, but it is a very effective way to find out what to do. So we recommend calling the insurance company and saying, hey, listen, I know I'm on a very expensive medication. I've been told it'll be X amount. So step one is to always contact WEA directly, confidentially yourself first. If you don't get the answer that you want, as Beth says, there's a grievance process. I will also tell you that your district gets very involved. I know that our team at M3, and we've got a very good team. Jamie couldn't be here with me tonight, but we've got an excellent team that does work very hard on trying to get your questions answered. And when it comes to us, that means that WEA did not give a satisfactory answer or the grievance process hasn't been going well. Oftentimes we can interject and help as your broker. Sometimes we can expedite a conversation about an alternative therapy or alternative medication, which does happen. the plan is generally pretty good. As you can imagine, it's difficult for the Wisconsin Education Association Trust Plan to consistently fail employees and maintain, an insurance company, because they're trusted to a large extent by the employees, and they try to hang on to that trust. The problem is the cost is so great, they don't want to deliver a 19% increase, and they also get accused of not managing the cost, that allowing anything to sail through, with regard to prescriptions occurs. So I think they're doing a reasonable job of it most of the time, but we do want to know at M3 when it's not working well. I hope that answers the question on the process a little bit.
And I will say that our benefits coordinator, Alexis Schultz, and I both came from an environment where we had a self-insured plan. So we don't like no, we like to try to make it work for the employees as best as we can, and we really do what we can. And we pester John and Jamie quite a bit with some of these issues. So.
Your team does not just say yes to whatever. I mean, we spend the time on it.
So when somebody does have a grievance, they go through you?
There's a process.
They actually go to WEA Trust first. What I'm saying is, if either the grievance process doesn't go well, meaning the answer was no, or during the grievance process it's delayed too much, or it takes too long, the employee oftentimes calls Human Resources, and then Human Resources contacts us. On a rare occasion, they'll call us without contacting Human Resources, but that's rare. They almost always call WEA first. They don't like the answer. Then they get in touch with Alexa or Lindell or Beth, and then they end up kind of coming to us.
When those cases, Beth, what have you experienced?
Well, I know Barb has one that she's struggling with. I'm not aware of the other one that you're referring to, Barb, but there have been very few. Wouldn't you agree, John?
I mean, we really don't we have had very few complaints, less than a handful that I know of related to prescriptions on a district of your size. And in north central Wisconsin, you're obviously a very large district. We don't see the level of complaints that we do when a carrier's dropping the ball consistently.
Do board members have any other questions of our representative or of Beth with respect to what's being proposed? So I would be looking for a motion to approve the health insurance renewal with WEA Trust and the dental renewal with Delta Dental with the changes as presented.
So moved.
Motion by Scott. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Wade. I have a motion and a second. Are there any questions or discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor with aye?
Aye.
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 Any opposed with nay? Motion carries. We'll move into item C, which is the substitute service contract.
Okay, so we are looking to make a change in our substitute services provider. And that is mainly because Parallel came back with a significant increase for this upcoming school year, as well as the low fill rates. They're just not meeting our expectations. So we are not looking at a change in technology. Therefore, we feel that it'll be a relatively seamless transition for the substitutes. Really, it's change in employer, but we'll still use Frontline for requesting subs and filling sub positions. We are recommending that the district move to Fidelis Consulting Services, and that is owned and operated by Tammy Rosenberg, who's here with us tonight and handing out the proposal to you. We've worked with Tammy in the past. The initial year that we were with Parallel, we worked very closely with Tammy, and we're well aware of her very dedicated customer service. and her enthusiasm over recruitment. She's been in this business now for 33 years, and so we know that she's very good at what she does. Tammy and her team, if selected, would have an office here at the district, and they would work out of that office. And again, she would be using the technology that we currently use, Frontline, and we contract for those services. So it would almost be like having our own internal recruiter and dispatcher. Tammy, we would be her only account in terms of substitute services, so we know that we would get complete dedication from her team. So I'm going to have Tammy come up and she can introduce herself and tell you a little bit about her company.
Good evening. I'm Tammy Rosenberg, and I am the president owner of Fidelis Consulting Services. Like Beth said, I've had 33 years in the industry, the last 15 about with 13 to 15 with all educational institutions doing substitute teacher and teacher assistant placement. I'm a female-owned company, so that's a benefit to the district. And I'm a Wisconsin native, so born and raised down in Racine, and spent a lot of time up in this area, in the Shawano area. So, history about myself, a little bit more. Last 12 years spent with Parallel Education, started the division, developed it, created all of the recruiting strategies, all the policies and procedures. We were nationwide. So I've done rural districts, urban districts, large, small, across the board. So understand the processes for recruiting and placing substitute teacher and teacher assistants. The team would be made up of myself. Like Beth said, we would have an on-site customer service representative dispatcher that would be located here at the district. And then we would have 2 dispatchers, probably working part-time, one in the morning and one in the evening. That would include also Sunday evenings, just because of how crazy Mondays and Fridays can be for substitute teachers. So that's kind of the overall of the company and the team. The recruitment strategy, you have to find people everywhere. So it's everything from job boards, social media, colleges, universities, workforce development, displaced workers, you name it, we're going to do a reach for that and find the adequate substitute teacher that can come into your district. The other thing that's nice is that we were able to join efforts with WeCan, which is the application process that the district uses. So in the event that we would find somebody that the district would like to hire, all their information now is housed in the same place and makes it much easier to transfer information for hiring purposes. Kind of decreases that time. Like Beth said, we are going to use the Frontline technology, which is not only for the placement of the subs and for the absent management component of it, but also for time and attendance to know who is there for more accurate hours and days worked by the substituted and teacher assistants. And then also the nice thing about the whole Frontline system is that it can be accessed via computer, a tablet, or their smartphone. So they can be at a soccer game, phone dings, they see that a job's open, they can grab it, it comes back through, and it's all done very electronically and very nicely. The other thing is that the Frontline system works well with the paycheck system. I'll be using the paycheck system for the payroll part of it. So the nice thing about that is that they take care of all the taxes, any deductions. They do the W-2 distribution at the end of the year. They do the direct deposit. It's all taken care of. And then it's a nice download from Frontline to Paychecks, and then from Paychecks to QuickBooks, which is the invoicing piece of it. So not a lot of room for error there. And all of those systems create beautiful reports that any department or human resources that they need can go ahead and get those reports that they're looking for to share with the district. The responsibility of the contractor. Well, this is good timing. I'm the employer of record, which means that if somebody slips in the parking lot and hurts their ankle, they're on my insurance, not yours. So that I think is a good thing after what I just heard. There's no hidden costs at all. So what you see, the cost structure is in the booklets that I passed out. That's what you get. There's nothing added, there's no additional fees, nothing like that. I like the idea of having a representative here only because it allows for, it helps with problem resolution before it escalates. So that person can go in and work with the schools and work with the substitute teacher and resolve any issues before it becomes more of a problem than what it really needs to be. The last thing is that Beth and her team, they have high standards for the service that comes in and takes care of their substitutes. We want to make sure that we meet those expectations, or better yet, exceed those expectations. So we want to make sure that we're a good partner with you and that we develop a relationship in which we are promoting exactly what you're promoting as a district. So I know it was short, kind of sweet. There's more detailed information, but Beth asked me to condense it. So any questions for me at this time?
So I noticed on here for your job boards, for any job postings searching for substitute teacher, are you responsible for those costs, or does that come back to the district?
Nope, those are our costs.
I also see in here something about like a markup rates that you were quoting.
Yes.
What is the markup rate? Is that like the difference between
That's
what you charge us and what you pay the teachers? Is that it?
correct, yep. And that covers all the costs. So that's where I cover my recruiting costs, and that's where I cover all the taxes, and any part of the labor burden, the unemployment, the workers' comp, all of that.
So I'd be interested in what's the difference in cost to the district between the company last
It's-
year and what you would.
Oh, I don't know
Yes,
last. I don't-
so we started out with parallel, and the markup rate was 27%. And then we ended up getting a bump of 1% in January, which we weren't expecting. So it went to 28%. Their proposal for the upcoming school year is 30%.
Yeah, I see that. So I'm thinking of what you charge the district. You know, the markup is your profit margin. But what in charge to the district is about the same between parallel and your.
No, I'm less.
Really?
Right, so she's proposing 27%, and they were proposing 30%. You have a proposal of 26% for retired teachers and long-term subs.
Yep.
And your office would be here on the district grounds?
Yes,
And so you would be only contracting with SPASH, or with Stevens Point School District, no
Correct.
other districts?
Nope.
Okay. And my concern with that is I know many years ago, we had a guy that helped put up our exercise outdoor, I can't remember what it's called.
The high ropes course?
Yeah, and they gave him an office at SPASH, and then he ended up using that to sell and run his business out of.
I really don't want any more districts.
Okay.
I had retired for a year, and Beth convinced me to.
And you can get enough people?
I can get enough people, I know I can.
Because I know their fill rates were like 88%, they said, and 71%.
Yeah, I know
I don't know if that's good or bad, to tell you the truth.
It's not good.
It's not good.
Because of COVID mostly, right?
That played into it this past year.
What are the usual rates, you know, if you want a student teacher?
For Stevens Point, your fill rate shouldn't be, I would say 95 would be the absolute
Okay.
lowest. There's no reason for it. You should be at 99, 98% fill rates. We were able to do it when we first took the district over, when I was still with Parallel, and your community didn't change. Yes, COVID hit, but there were also angles within COVID where you could have found people that were available to work, and I think there's other avenues there. don't think it probably was done for you, but I'll do it.
Do board members have any additional questions with respect to the proposal in front of us? Okay, so we are looking, I keep moving my agenda tonight, and then I lose track of where I am. So the motion that we're looking for is,
It's right here.
How about if I make the
the
motion?
go ahead, to approve pursuing a contract with Fidelis Consulting Services to provide substitute services from July 1, 2021 through June 30, 2022.
Can I just ask one more question? I apologize.
Yes, sure.
For the office space in the district, is that rent-free space or is that rent that is being paid out? Paid in, I should say?
No, there would be no rent charge.
Okay, so, and for Parallel, did they have anyone with, like, on-site in the district somewhere?
Parallel had their own, they agreed to open up a local office when we hired them, yeah. I think with COVID, I believe they probably closed that office and the individuals were working out of their homes.
Are there any further questions? So I am looking for that motion to approve pursuing a contract with Fidelis Consulting Services to provide substitute services from July 1, 2021 through June 30, 2022. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Ebel. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Pope. Are there any discussion or questions on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor with aye?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed with nay? The motion carries. All right, we will move into item 9, educational services, A, state testing opt-out.
So the information here is something that you see each year about this time of year. It's the number of parents who have opted their children out of the required state tests. So we're asking for your approval to go ahead and move forward with the parents' request to opt out of the test. There is an increase this year. As you would expect with COVID, a lot of our students are not coming into our buildings, they're being educated virtually. And then other parents that are in person have just decided that one more requirement on their children is not necessary. So we're asking for your approval to move forward with this information.
Are there any questions of Corey with respect to the opt-out parent requests or the whole concept of this opt-out?
These are all determined by the state, right?
They are required
we-
tests.
Yeah, we have no say in
Right.
the opt-out thing.
Are there any further questions?
So it says on here, parent must submit a written request for students to opt out to the principal or school board. I think I bring this up all the time whenever we have any information going out to families, but how do non-English speaking families convey this information? Can they write a letter in their native language, and does it get translated, or is it up to them to find someone to translate that request for them? Or what about parents who don't speak the language and who also are not able to communicate that in writing? Are there any other options for them to provide a request to opt out for the testing for their students?
We did not receive any questions regarding that, and I know that the letter that went out to families, we did have translated and it was sent out. You know, if parents had requested that we find an avenue for them to better communicate with us, we would have addressed that, but we didn't receive any inquiries there.
Because my concern is always you know, growing up, I had to translate documents, I had to interpret, and that is a huge concern if we are having a minor child translating or interpreting any kind of documents, because as an adult, I'm looking at this, I don't know what, some of this, because if I'm looking at like per Wisconsin stats, I'm gonna be like, I don't know what that means, I'm gonna try and Google it, what does that mean? So as an explanation, I also think that, an explanation exactly of what is this testing? Is it a required testing that every student must take in order to get some kind of funding, or is it to take a look at where the child, students in that certain grades, what is the performance level, or, like the average? So I guess my thing here is being able to effectively communicate what this testing is, and how do we communicate to parents to say, hey, you do have an option, instead of a little blurb on the bottom. I know I see a lot of emails coming through. On the very bottom, it has it in Hmong and Mandarin or Cantonese and Spanish, and it says, if you need a interpreter translation, then connect with us. But then again, we go back to, if they don't read and they don't write, how do they? And I know right when COVID hit, we sent out that mass voicemail out, which I think helped a lot of families. Because I don't work directly with families, but I do work with a program through CAP Services, Uplift, and when they're asking questions, it's usually, I didn't know about it. And it's like, well, it's in your email. Well, I don't access my email, I just have it signed up just in case, because that's the new technology. So I would just be wary about how we are getting this information out to families and how they can communicate that back to us as a district.
Thank you. And if you feel that there's someone at CAP that would be helpful, I know we are in connection with them, but if there's some ability to build partnership with them in terms of some of these communications, I'm sure the district would be open to.
I think that's great for Hmong-speaking families, but then we're also not looking, exclusively with other languages, which is difficult because they are a small population within our district. I honestly don't know what other resources we would have to provide them, other than a third-party interpreting or translation services.
Cora, can I ask? So I would imagine if I were a teacher and I were handing out something to all the students, I would be aware that there are students with families, because that's not going to be the only time where they're not going to understand what's coming to them. So I'm assuming that they have some kind of a process or procedure to say, this person is not communicating in our language, how do we get that information across? I mean, I could be wrong, but I just can't imagine, and it just depends on families, what access they have. I mean, it's an excellent point. I would think, though, that teachers would know pretty much when you're handing, now this is one specific test, but there have to be some things that come through that the students are going to need to know, and they're going to know if there's a language barrier, that they have ways of doing that. But it's a good thing to look into, though.
Well, you'd be surprised how many times I have an EA or someone calling me, speaking to me in Hmong, because it's an assumption. I know I'm always requesting just send things in English, because if it's in Hmong, sometimes it doesn't make sense to me. And I had to read it through so many times. I have a lot of folks in the district where they'll be like, well, they had an interpreter call me. And so I didn't need an interpreter, so it was just more confusing because I didn't really understand what they were trying to say. So and I don't think it should be the responsibility of teachers to understand that too, because I think sometimes students aren't discussing things at home, because honestly, I grew up being embarrassed of my parents. My mom didn't speak English and she didn't understand English, so a lot of times I was just like, we're going on a field trip, sign this. And that was about the gist of our conversation. Yeah, I think lots of teachers are aware, but I think there's just a lot of assumption that if Hmong is the primary language, that's, or Cantonese or Spanish, that's going to be the assumption, like, hey, let's have someone who speaks this language, give them a call, versus, and I don't know how the enrollment paper works, but I think if there's a question on there saying, what language do you prefer to be contacted?
Each family, when they enroll, have to fill out what's called a home language survey. So they let us know how they want us to communicate with them. And then that's generally how we send that information. But Chris, you're right. There are supports within the building and the district. We've got interpreters. We've got people that will make phone calls. But Ann, I'd like to sit down and talk with you sometime to see if you have any ideas on ways we can do better, because we definitely can, and we're open to that.
Are there any further questions of Corey with respect to the state testing opt-out parent requests item? Hearing none, I am looking for a motion to approve the written parent requests to exercise their choice to opt out their student from the state testing program.
Move to approve.
Motion by Ebel. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by
Wade.
Wade. So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion or questions on the motion? All those in favor with aye?
Aye.
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 Any opposed with nay? All right, we're moving into general meeting dates, times, locations. We have our board workshop that we've got scheduled for May 24th. We have our regular board meeting scheduled for June 14th. We've now received input from all board members with respect to the board retreat. Both June 7th, 2021 and June 28th, 2021 are dates that all board members indicated they could attend. We will be getting, we'd ask you to hold both those dates, but we will be getting out the date to you momentarily.
We're going to discuss tomorrow at cabinet what works
Can you
best.
repeat those
And
dates?
June 7th, 2021 and June 28th, 2021.
And that'll be confirmed over the next couple days.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is moving into closed session. We have a number of items on our closed session agenda, so I'm asking for a motion to go into closed session pursuant to WIS Stats 1985 paren 1 paren C to consider employment promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, and pursuant to Wisconsin statutes 1985 paren 1 paren E, to deliberate or negotiate the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conduct other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. 1, specifically to consider non-renewals. 2, specifically to consider compensation for all non-represented staff, including administrators. Item 3, specifically to consider employee compensation. Item 4, specifically to approve administrator contract for transportation manager. Item 5, specifically to approve administrator contract for online learning center coordinator. Item 6, specifically to approve administrator contract for school psychologist. Item 7, specifically to approve administrator support contract for program support specialist.
Move to go into closed.
Motion by Ebel to go into closed. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Scott. Any discussion or questions? I will have Carlin call the roll.
Ms. Portson,
Yes.
Ms. Va,
Yes.
Mr. Wade,
Yes.
Mr. Pope,
Yes.
Mr. Mansky,
Yes.
Ms. Rano.
Did you say yes, Judy? We couldn't hear you. Perfect. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Ebel,
Yes.
Ms. Erler,
Yes.
9-0. Motion passes.
All right, we'll be going into closed session. If everybody could log off and then log